So it is 8:30 here on the on the East Coast. So I'm going to put everybody on mute, but I will let you know how to request unmuting so you can ask a question when it's time. My name is Boy, and I am a Citizen Empowerment Coordinator here at American Promise. And I want to give a huge thank you to everybody tuning into this call tonight. Maybe you're listening to the recording afterwards, but either way, you're stepping up to save our democracy. So thank you. Now, the purpose of this call is to inspire you about our work to get big money out of politics and prepare you for the upcoming National Citizen Leadership Conference and Lobby Day, which is this weekend, June 22nd to the 25th in Washington, D.C. And you can go to the NCLC website, which is www.citizenleaders.us to learn more about the conference and register, and it's not too late. And if you'd like to bring a friend, we are having a BOGO, bring a friend, and you get a discount for your friend for the conference. And to register for that, it is at www.citizenleaders.us. Now, this is the last in a series of calls geared at preparing you to have the most dynamic and exciting Lobby Day possible. In case you missed the other 3 calls in this series, check out our YouTube channel, which you can find by searching American Promise in the search tab on YouTube, and go to the playlist entitled 2018 Lobby Day Preparation. And that's where you'll find recordings of our previous calls. We will also include a link to these calls in our follow-up email that we'll send tomorrow. Last month, we heard from Jay Butera, Senior Congressional Liaison for the Citizens Climate Lobby, who gave us specific insights on how to have the most impactful cross-partisan congressional meeting. And the month before, we had TED Deutsch's scheduler, Alex Rocha, who gave us an insider's look into how to effectively schedule congressional meetings. And on this call, we're joined by the other Citizen Empowerment Coordinator, Azer Cole, and Sam Daley-Harris, who is the founder of Civic Courage and someone who we've heard from throughout this series. This call is meant to answer as many questions as possible so we can have a successful Lobby Day, including specific asks and important tips. When it's time for question and answer, I'll let you know how to raise your hand to request unmuting so you can ask your question. But first, I want to start with this quote from Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweikart, who said, "We aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're the crew. We aren't residents on this planet. We are the citizens. The difference in both cases is responsibility." And let me repeat that. We aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're the crew. We aren't residents on this planet. We're citizens. The difference in both cases is responsibility. And your meetings on Lobby Day are an example of how you being crew, of you getting up out of your passenger seat and walking up to the cockpit and taking responsibility for the direction of our democracy. So congratulations. There is no amount of money that can equal the power of well-planned civic engagement. And I'm excited to see how this historic day will bring us closer to our 28th Amendment victory. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Azer Cole, who's going to go over the logistics of Lobby Day and answer any questions you may have. Hey, Azer.
Hey, Boy, and hey, everyone. Boy, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So as many of you probably know, I'm the guy who's been buzzing in your ear to schedule Lobby Day meetings and connecting you with others in your area who are attending the conference. So thank you for putting up with me so far. We've got over 70 meetings scheduled for Lobby Day, and the day is really starting to take shape. And I'm just going to walk us through step by step what you need to know for Lobby Day once you get to the conference. So please be thinking of questions you'd like to ask as I go through this. And the first thing is, when you arrive at the conference, you'll find the main conference registration table, and make sure that you come see me at the Lobby Day table right next to the registration table. I'll give you your own constituent folder, a folder that will help you have a successful Lobby Day. It'll have a laser talk, fact sheet, copies of relevant bills with lists of co-sponsors, a map of Capitol Hill showing you where the different congressional office buildings are, a document laying out our asks, and a meeting best practices document. Then You'll tell me which state you're from, and I'll give you a document with each of the meetings scheduled in your state with the time and location and contact information for the liaison for each meeting that has been set up. If you are the liaison, the person who's set up the meeting with your member of Congress, or in some cases members of Congress, I'll give you a leave behind folder to leave with that congressional office. It's your responsibility to bring the leave behind folder with you on Monday to your Lobby Day meetings, so please do not forget. So now you have your Lobby Day materials, the constituent folder that each of you will have, and the leave behind folders that the liaisons will have. So what's next? The Saturday afternoon plenary from 3:30 to 4:45 is fully focused on preparing and practicing for Lobby Day. Sam Daley-Harris and I will lead this discussion with members from the Port Clinton, Ohio, and Tri-County, New Jersey APAs coming up and demonstrating different sections of an effective congressional meeting. And after you've seen the demonstration, we'll ask you to actually practice in your Lobby Day group before we take a few questions. And my really big tip for this is try to sit with as many members from your Lobby Day group as possible so you can make the most of the time during this session to practice with your group. In the same vein, I'd also urge you to use the breakfast Sunday morning and the dinner Sunday night as time to get together with your group to continue to practice. On Sunday afternoon from 1:40 to 2:50, and if you're hearing me say these dates and thinking you should be writing this down, this will all be in the agenda that you'll all get when you get to the conference, and it's on the website right now. But Sunday afternoon from 1:40 to 2:50, there's also going to be a breakout session on Lobby Day specifically. And you can either send someone from your group to this session to get more questions answered, or you can come with the entire group, absolutely, for more practice. Then on Monday morning, the big day, all the teams are going to gather on the steps of the U.S. Capitol at 8 in the morning for a group picture, and then we'll be off. Throughout the day, the back of the Longworth cafeteria will be home base for Lobby Day. I'll be there all day with groups coming and going. And at the end of each Lobby Day meeting, your group's note taker, and there will be a note taker form in the in the leave behind folders. Your group's note taker should follow the instructions listed on the note taking handout, including inputting the information into our online reporting. And don't forget that on 4 in the afternoon on Lobby Day, we'll meet in the Rayburn House office building, room 2103, and have a chance to hear about your meetings, debrief, and hear from Massachusetts Congressman and champion for the 28th Amendment, Jim McGovern. Last but certainly not least, we're going to celebrate. It's this exact type of action that's going to win the 28th Amendment and fix our Constitution's foundational flaws. And I'm so excited for this huge day of action, and I'm happy to turn it back to Waboy to lead us in Q&A. Hey, Waboy.
Hey, Azer. Thank you so much for that really helpful information. Okay, everybody, so if you have a question for Azer, please press the number 1 on your keypad so I know to call on you, and we'll get this question and answer started. Again, this is geared at making sure that you answer all of those last-minute questions about Lobby Day. So just press the number 1 on your keypad, and I will call on you. Azer, it looks like you gave an incredible description because nobody has a question yet.
Yeah, well, I'm not stressed about the conference at all because I know, once we get there, no one's really even going to say anything to me. Everyone's going to know exactly what to do, and we're going to have, probably 70 new champions in Congress after 70 Lobby Day meetings. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Good. Oh, it looks like we have somebody. All right, Dennis, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Fort Lee, New Jersey, and it's really kind of a maintenance question. What is the recommended attire for meeting with the Congress, with our Congress representatives and senators? And I guess as far as housekeeping as well, for the meeting itself, what is kind of dress code?
Yeah, absolutely, Dennis. It's a good question. And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but for these Lobby Day meetings, you're going to want to be looking good. So, certainly business casual at most casual. Feel free to wear a blazer if you'd like. But
this is Sam. I would lean toward a jacket and tie if you're up for it, because it's a serious meeting and you want to come in and look as serious as you can. Dressy casual is fine, and I would say a jacket and a tie is even better for guys, and then for women also, thinking on the upper end of dress. It's a serious It's a serious business meeting, basically. Even though they work for you, you want to put out a good image.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Martin, you are unmuted. Sorry. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Hi, I'm calling from Silver Spring, Maryland, and my question is, I just need to be sure that we've got a couple of rather unique logistical issues with the Maryland group. Do you know how many people we've got from Maryland exactly at this point coming in?
Martin, I think there are about 7 or so people is my last estimate. I could double check that exact number for you, but I think it's about 7, maybe 8 folks from Maryland who are going to be there.
All right. I could arrange, the logistical problem with our senators, that they both wanted to arrange meetings at the same time, so I think we're going to have to split up during that time. But I could only arrange a meeting with my own representative. The people who are from districts other than my own would have had to arrange the meetings on their own, because I couldn't contact them because of the limitations on their websites. Do you know if any of them have been able to arrange meetings on their own?
Yeah, it's a good question, Martin. And, I've reached out to each person as they've registered for Lobby Day, some more responsive than others. So it's fantastic that you've got a meeting with your own House representative. And to your question of how to best handle, it sounds like 2 meetings with each senator who both are free at the same time. I know when we'd talked earlier, the solution of coordinating within the 8 or so people and 4 going to one meeting and 4 going to the other meeting was thrown out there. And Sam, I'd be curious to hear any insight you have.
Yeah, I think splitting up. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can hear you.
So I think splitting up is a great idea, but it would also be probably pretty terrific if the aides from the 2 Senate offices were willing to meet together with all 8 of you, and the 2 aides. I mean, you've got Democrats in both cases, so it would be a similar kind of meeting. So either, you just need to use this time to make it one or the other.
I don't think, I have a feeling, based on what I know about Senator Cardin's aide, his name is Van Horn. He has not been very cooperative in the past. Van Hollen, his whole office has been incredibly cooperative.
Yep.
Her name is Karen Robb, and she's wonderful.
The bottom line is, I'd urge you to make the decision. Either Karen might talk to the aide and Cardin say, Karen might say, I'll come over and we can do the thing jointly, or you could just split it up and schedule 2 meetings at the same time with 4 of you going to one and 4 going to the other, and you can practice it at the conference in the 2 separate groups if that's the way it goes.
Karen has not been responsive, surprisingly. I've tried to contact her several times, and she has not responded to me. So at this point, I think it may be a little bit too late to try to change any of the meetings.
Perfect. Then just move with what you have if you've got it already set.
I don't think I have. I don't think we have a whole lot of choice about the schedule.
Not a problem.
All right. So we have another question. Eugene, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm from Philadelphia, and the question is, if I am meeting with a Democrat versus Republican, what are some talking points that you recommend for each of the different philosophies?
Yeah, it's a good question, Eugene. And in your constituent folder, there's going to be a series of asks. Asks specific to a Democratic member of Congress, a Democrat member of Congress who maybe already is a co-sponsor of bills we're talking about, and asks for a Republican member of Congress who, maybe isn't a co-sponsor of the bills we're talking about. And for both of them, as you'll see in the meeting best practices document, the key is, a big key at least, is asking a lot of leading questions, sort of feeling them out, letting them explain where they stand on money and politics issues. So, for example, for a Democrat member of Congress, you might say, well, there's so much money in politics. How does it affect your job? You could say that to a Republican member of Congress too. But if you're thinking of ways to specifically frame this issue to Republicans, one, you could always say, how much of your time is spent fundraising? And can you talk about the need to constantly be raising money? That's a really good lead-in regardless of party. But if you really wanted to get into it, the opioid crisis is a problem that really cuts across both major party lines, where you could lead with a question like, I'm really worried about the rising opioid epidemic I see, and have done my research and see a pretty strong link to pharmaceutical lobbying. I'm curious as to how you think we should best combat the opioid crisis and sort of your understanding of how money in politics fits into that. I hope that's helpful. And Sam, I'll let you chime in if you've got anything else.
We're going to deal with this a little bit in my section in the next half of the call, so stay tuned. We'll get into this some more in a few minutes.
Great. All right. We have another question. Looks like David, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what is your question?
I'm calling from Massachusetts, and I have two closely related questions, both having to do with coordination within our group. When we met with Congressman McGovern during the 2016 conference, one of the things he advised us was that we needed to get our act together and have one common set of language that we were all asking for, rather than having different people working on the 28th Amendment asking for different versions of it. And so, when I asked basically this question during the last call, Sam basically said, go for anything, but that was not consistent with Congressman McGovern's advice. He basically said we needed to get coordinated. And then the other related question about coordination is in lobbying in the Massachusetts State House. We're finding that the bill that we're working for the 28th Amendment, we're being lobbied against by our nominal allies, Common Cause, who's arguing that that the Massachusetts legislature should vote against the bill that we're looking for. And the question is, how do we form some non-aggression pact where our work toward the 28th Amendment is not being sabotaged by another alleged ally who has a different strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can address both of those questions. The first one, You mentioned that McGovern's talked about the value of rallying around one piece of legislation. We certainly agree, and part of the long-term goals of the conference is to do just that. McGovern's the lead sponsor of HJR 31. There's going to be extensive discussion about what the 28th Amendment should say, if it's an existing piece of legislation, if it's one that is pieces of existing pieces of legislation. So agree with you that it is important to coalesce around one bill, of course, and that process is not a super quick one, but it is definitely continuing to roll forward. And as for your concern, I think rightfully so, about groups actively working to discredit, the convention strategy in terms of binding pieces of legislation going through, state legislatures. I can't speak for what goes on inside the brains of any other organizations, but I know at the conference there's going to be staff members from Wolfpack, staff members from Common Cause, and part of American Promise's organizational goal really is to bring players in this democracy movement together. So we're working to forward each other's goals and not move them backwards. So the conference, is going to be squarely tackling that issue and working towards collaboration.
Thanks, Azer. Great answer. Marie, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Everybody, I'm calling in from New Jersey, Tri-County, New Jersey APA. And I have a question that maybe Sam will address in the later part of the call, and that is about the resolution that's going to be proposed to the GOP lawmakers. Is there any further progress on the wording of that, and are there any Republican members of Congress that have actually come out and agreed to be supportive of that resolution so far?
Yes, Sam, is that something you're going to talk about later? I'm happy to address it now if not.
No, why don't you go ahead? Will the draft language be in every leave behind or in every constituent folder?
I'm trying to remember right now, and I think the draft language, I know it's at least in every leave behind to Republicans. The answer, Marie, is yes, it has been crafted. The answer to your follow-up question is no Republicans are on board with it yet because we haven't approached any Republicans with it yet. Lobby Day is really going to be the first day that we do that. And does that answer your question?
Sorry, Marie, you're off mute again. You can answer.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Okay, great.
All right. We have time for just a few more questions here. We have a question from Steve Lipscomb, who's actually going to be a speaker at the conference. Steve, where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
New Mexico, and I was just going to respond that one of the projects American Promise is working on in a number of states with us is the Fix It America Amendment. So if you're looking for specific language that has already passed in the first state that it went into and is heading into probably 6 to 10 more states in the next calendar year, you can go to fixitamerica.org, and we are doing sort of the process of going organization by organization. So we're currently in those various states working with American Promise, Take Back Our Republic, Common Cause, and Represent Us and other groups. So that may be something that would be useful to have in mind as people go in. And that's not to inject my thing, but that might answer the Massachusetts question.
Great, Steve. And what was the URL again?
It's fixitamerica.org.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. We have time for one more question here before I kick it over to Sam. David De Bruin, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. You are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what is your question?
De Bruin. I'm in Chicago. Really, one is attire. Attire for the weekend program, not the lobby day. I assume it's business casual, but happy to hear otherwise. And secondly, we're looking at visiting both congressional representatives as well as Senate offices, and I'm wondering if given that the resolutions, I believe, were House resolutions, in terms of what the ask is for the Senate, is that something that Sam will be covering?
Yeah, well, I'll address the second part of your question, David. It's nice to talk with you, and I'll let Sam address the attire part of your question. But there is a Senate version of HJR 31 in the Senate. It's SJR 8. It's the same language. And in your constituent folder, there's a comprehensive asks sheet, which will break down asks for Democrat senators, asks for Republican senators very thoroughly, which you'll get when you stop by the lobby day table.
And this is Sam. Your question was particularly about the conference itself, and I would assume, quite frankly, that's not my thing, but I assume it's casual at the conference. If you are one who likes to dress up more, fine. Just realize when it comes to the Hill meetings, if you're meeting with a member of Congress, the male members of Congress will be in business suits. Just that's what they wear. And the women in Congress will be in business attire. And so that's why I would urge people as we go to the Hill to think in that vein when we do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those answers and those really great questions. Thank you, Azer, for answering those questions, and Sam as well. And thank you, Azer, for the amazing work that you've done to bring this day together. I'm really excited to see how it goes. I'm now going to pass it over to Sam, who is the founder of Results and founder of Civic Courage. He led his first lobby day in 1984 and has been to lobby days every year since. He's also the author of Reclaiming Our Democracy. Hey, Sam.
Hi there. Thank you, boy, and hi, everyone. So if you don't have the lobby day training doc in front of you and you're able to go online right now, you can go to www.citizenleaders.us. That's citizens, singular, leaders, plural, .us. Click on Lobby Day at the top of the page, and just above the word Let's Do It, which is a little more in the middle of that page, you'd click here to download our Citizen Lobby Day training material. If you can't go online right now, don't worry. We'll send the doc around to everyone who's registered for the call. The goal for your meetings is to start or continue building a relationship with your member of Congress or their staff. The sample meeting outline is at the bottom of page 5 in that Lobby Day document. I'd like to go over one section of the call, the ask, and some issues related to the ask and related to the meeting itself. I'm going to go over briefly the asks right now, but then have you focus on the question, why does this issue matter to you? And some other related meeting issues. So if you're meeting with a House Democrat, the primary ask is that they co-sponsor HJRes 48 and HJRes 31. Now, many of them already have. So the secondary ask in that case is if they're already a co-sponsor, we'll thank them and ask them to write a letter to the editor or op-ed or participate in a briefing or town hall in the district on overturning Citizens United, all in order to educate their constituents and, frankly, up their own commitment. There's some other secondary asks in all the meetings, and I'll go over those at the end. If you're meeting with a House Republican, the primary ask is that they be a lead sponsor or an initial sponsor, not the lead, but on the group of sponsors, on a House Republican resolution on this issue. If you're meeting with a Senate Democrat, the primary ask is that they co-sponsor SJ Res 8. Now, many of them have done that. So if they're already a co-sponsor, we'll thank them and ask them to write a letter to the editor, this is all similar, or op-ed, or participate in a briefing or town hall in the state on overturning Citizens United, again, to both educate their constituents and, frankly, up their own commitment by taking that kind of stand. If you're meeting with a Senate Republican, it's like this House Republican, the primary ask is that they lead or be an initial sponsor of a Senate Republican resolution on this issue. Now, for all the meetings, there are these secondary asks. I'll just mention them briefly. One is that they attend a briefing by Francis Johnson, who's president of Take Back Our Republic, and Jeff Clements together on the day after Lobby Day, Tuesday, June 26th at 9 in the morning. And the last secondary ask is, if you're meeting with an aide, and frankly many of us are, if you're meeting with an aide, one of the secondary asks for all these meetings will be that they help in securing a meeting with the representative or the senator back home, back in the state. So in this section, you'll briefly outline our issue and the primary ask, and share your individual experience on why this issue matters to you. So that's what I want to focus on for a moment. I'd like to see if we could get a volunteer right now to share your personal experience or why this issue matters to you. And so I'm going to ask if we could have a volunteer who would press 1 on your keypad and share your own version of why this matters to you. You might have had some experience in the last year or 5 or 10 that says this issue of money in politics is critical. Why does this matter to you? Well, boy, can we see if we can get a volunteer on answering that question?
Sure, Sam. So if you would like to volunteer for this exercise, please press the number 1 on your keypad, and I will unmute you, and you can participate. Looks like we have some shy people.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead. If there's someone, let them go ahead.
We do. David, you are unmuted. Go ahead. All right, Sam, David is unmuted.
Go ahead, David.
Sorry, I had it muted on my end, too.
Yeah, your own phone, too. Okay, go ahead.
I can relate to this myself because back in the late 80s, I was a candidate for a state Senate race. It was a crowded race, and I didn't succeed, but did well. But and it was a great experience. But the part of it that everyone hates is the money calls, and at that time, of course, money was influential, but it wasn't as extreme as it is now.
Yeah.
And today, notwithstanding having a very comfortable income between my wife and myself, the thought that I would seek to run for office is very unappealing because of the fact that it has become so dominant with money calls, especially for congressional races where you're up every 2 years and it's sort of a constant campaign.
Yeah. So you're going back to your own experience in a campaign, running for office, and just kind of multiplying that a couple of times by the way money has really affected things today. Very good. Very good. Well, boy, can we see if there's someone else who maybe has a different cut for themselves? And then I may give a couple of suggestions for people to consider. let's see if there's someone else who would volunteer to share about why this issue matters to you.
Sure. So please press the number 1 on your keypad, and I will unmute you so that you can participate and share some of your personal experiences about why this work moves you to take action. Let's just press the number 1 on your keypad. All right. Judith, where are you calling in from, and what's your personal experience?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. I'm calling in from Delaware, and I'm 67, and I retired early when I was 62 in 2013, having saved up for that purpose, so that I could work on this issue. Because throughout my adult life, I discovered that pretty much everything I really, really cared about that had to do with public policy was always losing out. And finally, when I sifted through and got down into the root of it all, it turned out this was at the root of everything that was disturbing to me. I started out, I grew up in the Vietnam era, so I started out with a lot of concern, and I still have it, with militarism and the vast sums of money that go into our military. More recently, climate change strikes me as an enormous threat to everyone everywhere, and I feel that we simply can't seem to move ahead. Our health insurance, our whole healthcare delivery system, our pharmaceuticals. I'm actually a pharmacologist, so I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and I am just appalled by what I see as just utter corruption at every level relating to this issue.
Brilliant. Okay, fabulous. Fantastic. This is all great. I'm going to give you some other ideas, and I'm not telling you should grab any of them, but they might spark something. So, for example, during the financial crisis of 2008 especially and into 2009, as people were losing their jobs and losing their homes, etc., and there was virtually no one being prosecuted over that. You may or may not have had setback during the financial crisis and kind of noticed that people were getting off scot-free, and the economic system was getting toward the brink. For me personally, when 20 first graders and 6 adults were murdered in Connecticut at an elementary school, and basically nothing happened through federal legislation on that issue. It was like an existential moment. The grief that I felt about what happened and the inaction around there. So take a look at, as you have been doing. So hopefully this was a useful little exercise. After you've shared why the issue matters to you, welcome feedback. Welcome questions, comments from the member of Congress or staff regarding the bill or issue. If you're meeting with a Republican and they seem resistant to the issue, ask some open-ended questions, maybe questions like this. What are your thoughts on the current campaign finance system? Is the campaign finance system all good, or are there improvements that could be made? What, if any, changes would you make to improve the campaign finance system? This is with someone where you really want to hear where they're coming from if you go in and there's resistance at the beginning of the meeting. Other questions and thoughts. One great question is, what could we be doing more of in the district to make it easier for you to support this issue, or to make it easier for you to lead on this issue? What more could we be doing in the state to make it easier for you to either support, depending on who they are, or lead on this issue? If someone's resistant, what's preventing you from supporting this approach? You're just looking for ways to hear them out. We're betting the farm on relationships. Anger and ranting on our part won't build relationships. we're looking to go from I think we're 1 to 65 on co-sponsors, 1 Republican, and 165 Democrats. And so if they raise an unrelated topic during the meeting, don't take the bait. Stay on topic. So I'm going to ask Azer to demonstrate a member of Congress or their staff raising an unrelated issue, and then I'll not take the bait. So Congressman Azer, do you want to go ahead and talk to us a bit more, probably in a way that might try to take us off topic?
Sure, Sam, and thank you and your group for coming in to see me. And whenever I meet with constituents, I always raise the issue of the national anthem and how it's just not right for anyone to sit or kneel during it. Did you see the piece I wrote about that in my constituent newsletter, by the way, Sam?
I don't think any of us did see it, and if you've got a copy, we'd like to take it with us. Take it with us. But I really want to go back to this whole issue of Citizens United and see where you stand on that issue. So I was not going to go on a whole other discussion on God knows what. I wanted to stay on topic and not take the bait. So I'm going to open it up for questions in a moment. Another point. If the congressperson or the aide says something negative about this issue or about the movement, ask them to say more or ask why they think that is, rather than getting into a big debate about it. Because we really want to hear where they're coming from. Because when we can start hearing them, they can start getting a bit more unstuck. So now I'm going to ask Congresswoman Waboy to say something negative about this issue or about the movement, and then I'd like to try and demonstrate not getting into a debate with her, but quote-unquote hearing her out on that. So Congresswoman?
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you for your group for coming to meet with me. I always like it when constituents come to talk with me, and I really admire all of you for getting involved. But honestly, I just really see this as a Democrat issue. Have you seen the list of co-sponsors? You'd be hard-pressed to find a Republican on that list.
Well, I understand what you're saying. Why do you think that is?
You know, I think maybe because it's just been branded as a Democrat issue, but I would like to think that no matter what party, getting money out of politics is something, both sides can agree on, but for some reason Republicans are really resistant to it.
Can you say more about that? Let me interrupt for a second. So what I'm trying to do is A, hear her out, but B, get her to think about why she says what she says, quite frankly, looking for an opening on my end or our end. So I didn't do any put up your dukes. I just said, why do you think that is? Or could you say more about that? And then you notice that Congresswoman Waboy seemed to have to stop and think for a moment why they thought that was, or what more would they want to say about that? So thanks. The bottom line is we really want to listen carefully, and we want to have fun. I'm going to say one other thing and open it up to questions. Remember, on Saturday, there'll be a plenary in the afternoon focused on practicing our Lobby Day meetings. 2 different APAs will come to the stage and demonstrate sections of the meeting. Then we'll have people practice what they just saw demonstrated in their Lobby Day groups. So sit with your group if you can. Then another APA will come to the stage and demonstrate another section of the Lobby Day meeting. And then we'll have everyone in the room practice what they've just seen again demonstrated, taking questions throughout. So I think it'll be a very important time. And then after Saturday afternoon, it'd be fabulous if your group could get together for breakfast, which is being provided Sunday morning, or at dinner or after dinner Sunday night, for more preparation so you feel more and more comfortable. So I'd like to go to questions now. If you have a question on anything related to Lobby Day, please press 1 on your keypad, and I'm going to ask LeBoy to let us know if we have any questions. Anyone's pressed 1 on their keypad, so you can unmute them. Do we have anyone yet?
We had David Rosenberg. He wrote in a question. He said,
okay.
Please repeat the information about the briefing on Tuesday following Lobby Day. Azer, is something that you could touch on really quickly?
I just got an email from Ben about an hour ago, so Azer, you might know more. My understanding is that it's set for 9 in the morning on Tuesday the 26th, that there will either be a Dear Colleague, where a member of Congress alerts their colleagues in Congress about the briefing, best case scenario, and you'd all have a copy of it. Azer, maybe we could have a stack of them or something. And if there isn't a Dear Colleague, then hopefully we can have a little one-pager or a half sheet with a date, time, location, and a tiny little bio on Francis Johnson and on Jeff Clements, who will be doing this, quite frankly, kind of left-right briefing. Azer, can you say more about that briefing, and maybe they'll be talking to the report that was released?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll certainly be focusing in on the Government of Citizens Not Money report, a report which details 200-plus examples of current Republican state representatives who have voted in favor of 28th Amendment resolutions in their state legislatures, and lists countless examples of Republicans, federal Republicans, who are adamant about the need for a 28th Amendment. And the only other thing I would add there is, there will be a half pager. That's the form it will be in, an invitation to this briefing on the 26th. There's going to be one tucked into each leave behind folder. We'll invite all of the members of Congress we're having meetings with. And we'll probably have a stack of them on the Lobby Day table as well. If the constituent, is able to stick around till Tuesday and wants the details, all the more power to you for coming. It's going to be a cool event.
Yeah. Well, boy, do we have any other questions?
Not yet, but if you would like to ask a question, please press the number 1 on your keypad, and I will unmute you. Eugene, you are unmuted. Where are you calling in from, and what's your question?
Hi, this is Eugene from Philadelphia, and I'm looking at the Resolution 8 for the Senate, and my question is, it says that the Congress will have authority to limit campaign contributions and expenditures. So what I'm wondering is, won't it all violate the First Amendment that is now given to corporations to limit speech because of Citizens United and its predecessor rulings in the courts?
Yeah, Eugene, I wish I had a law degree to answer that question as thoroughly as it deserves to be answered. There's going to be a big focus of the conference throughout is going to be plenaries and breakout sessions with constitutional scholars, with the authors of that bill. Jim McGovern, who's the co-sponsor of the House version of that very bill, is going to be, addressing the crowd. People who know a lot about that very question, about the constitutional ins and outs, are going to be having back and forth discussions, fielding questions just like that. So I'd encourage you to ask, some variation of that at the conference when you get a chance.
Excellent. All right. So if you have a question, please press the number 1, and I will unmute you.
And well, boy, I just thought of, one additional bit of information to Eugene's question where, correct me if I'm wrong, the question was, would the language be unconstitutional given the court's interpretation? the whole point of the constitutional amendment is to, fix the court's interpretation. It is how you bypass Supreme Court interpretations by changing the framework, our country's constitution. So the answer is, a constitutional amendment, cannot be deemed unconstitutional by the courts. That's the reason we're pursuing that avenue.
That's right. Excellent. Well, it looks like we've done a pretty darn good job of answering these questions and providing information, because it looks like nobody else has a question right now.
Okay, well, great. So for those of you who are on or listening, perhaps in the car or train on the way to the NCLC, and there's still time, if you've got 2 of your meetings set and you're still working on the third, or you've got 1 of them set and you're still working on the other 2, your rep and 2 senators, please go for it tomorrow and Friday while there is still time. And we're going to work really hard during that plenary on Saturday afternoon to get people more and more comfortable so that if they do their own practice Sunday morning and Sunday night, they'll feel well prepared for their meetings with Congress and their staff. So with that, I'll hand it back to a boy to close the call.
All right. I'm going to close the call with the same quote that we used to open, and that is from the Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweikart, who said, "We aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth, we're the crew. We aren't residents on this planet, we're citizens. The difference in both cases is responsibility." Thank you all for being the crew and for being there for the NCLC blast-off this weekend. I'm going to take everybody off mute so that we can say goodbye, and we will be meeting each other soon. So just give me 1 second, and I will unmute you all. All right, we're all unmuted. So goodbye, everybody. See you very soon in
Thanks
DC.
so much.
Yeah.
See you in D.C. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Take care.